So what are tariffs? What are we talking about these past few days? It's become an incredible topic that some people sometimes don't understand, but they get very excited. Let's take a dive into it and see what tariffs are all about and how it's going to affect me, you, and our businesses today. Tariffs were originated in 1789. It was one of the first acts of Congress to increase revenue for the new formed government, the United States of America. Let's take a deep dive to understand how tariffs are going to affect our daily lives from the positive and negative way. The United States wants to impose a 10% flat tax across the board for all goods and services that are going to be imported from the Chinese government. And that's a bargaining chip that we're going to be able to play with, just like we're playing with Mexico and with Canada. We came to an agreement to extend the tariffs by 30 days. And we came to an agreement with Mexico today to have an extension for 60 days on the conditions of having Mexico putting 10,000 troops across the southern border in order not to have any illegals, drug dealers, drugs, guns, anything that's supposed to come to our country to cross it. The reason why we have an extension is because it's a bargaining chip, as I mentioned just moments ago. Mexico didn't want to agree to it right away, and they didn't want to impose a 25% tariffs back on us. Because we also have to understand, if we impose tariffs on other countries, so can other countries impose tariffs on us. We also have goods and services that are being exported to other countries. So it's not a one-way street as we try to understand. It's a two-way street, just the way as it's going to be very expensive for us to import their products to our country. One very important fact I want you to understand. When tariffs are imposed, you know who pays for it? It's not going to be the government that the tariffs are imposed on. It's going to be the government that is imposing the tariffs, which is, in this case, is us, the United States. When we impose tariffs on any country, the importer of that service or goods is going to pay the tariff. And if the tariff is paid by the importer, guess what the importer is going to do? The importer is just a businessman like you and I. They're going to pass that cost back to the consumer. The consumer is going to pay for that. Again, that's going to be me, you, and your family. For instance, I'm going to bring you an example. If we're importing Nike shoes made in China, and we have a 10% tax. Let's say the average cost of a Nike shoe that an importer brings from China is $40, right? Or let's say $50 for the sake of argument. Now it's going to be $55, okay? And if the importer, usually they double the price, they sell it for, if they're bringing it $50, they're going to sell it for $100. Now it's going to be $110. If we count the number of shoes that are being brought into the United States, it's an excessive amount. I'm talking about only Nike. I'm not even mentioning any other brands. Let's say, for example, we bring in or import 2 million shoes every single year. Now, 2 million times the 10%, that's $200,000 additional dollars that's going to be passed on to the consumer. That's just a hypothetical. Now, let's look at the bright side of how it's going to possibly affect us in a positive way. If we impose these tariffs, that's going to make our entrepreneurs, our corporations, to build up new factories, compete with foreign governments, compete with foreign businesses in order for their products to be sold at a similar price as we were buying previously. Yes, it will give us the opportunity to build up more plants. For instance, auto manufacturing. I just brought an example for shoe manufacturing. Let's say Nike is bringing or making shoes in the United States. Yes, we will build a Nike shoe plant. Yes, we will hire more labor. Yes, all that money and tax and revenue will go to the U.S. government and go to American pockets. However, at the same time, I want you to look at it from this perspective. If it's being made in the USA, which is fantastic, I mean, we all want everything to be made in the USA in order for all those profits and taxes to go into our home. But also, I want you to take into consideration those expenses are going to be passed on to us as well, because American labor is not comparable to Chinese labor. American daily cost of living is not comparable to the daily cost of living in China. It's way more expensive to live in the United States than it is in China. This is a new way of resetting the market. Yes, I understand. It's going to be better for the business owner. It's going to be better for the manufacturer. It's going to be better for the U.S. government because they're going to be collecting more taxes, because with higher revenue, higher profits, there'll be higher taxes that'll be paid back to the U.S. government. However, again, people, let's understand the fact how it's going to go back to the average American. How is this going to affect the blue-collar worker? How is this going to affect the middle class, which is the most important class of America? Middle class runs this country. It's not the top 1% that runs this country. It's the middle class. Without us, America doesn't exist. It's just like without small business, America doesn't exist. By resetting the market in certain sectors, for instance, steel sector, auto manufacturing, or energy, the reason why we're imposing a 25% tariff on Canada is because we're importing their energy. At one point, we used to be the #1 steel producer in the world. But this was years ago. We're number 16 on the chart of the most steels produced as a country. Do you know who's number one? Can you guess? It's not Russia, it's not India, it's your favorite country, China. Let's go back in time for a second. During the Great Depression in the 1930s, Congress passed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, which infamously raised tariffs during the Great Depression. It worsened global economic condition and it reduced international trade. So we have to take a look from this perspective as well. Not only, as I mentioned, can we impose tariffs, but other countries can impose tariffs on us as well. China is one of the biggest buyers of soy, pork, and machinery from the United States. And if they impose tariffs on us, our products are going to be very expensive for them as well. And they're going to look for a cheaper market. Just look at yourself as a businessman or an entrepreneur. If your supplier is providing you higher cost items, are you going to stay with that supplier? No, you're going to look elsewhere because that's not the only supplier in the world. So isn't the United States. United States isn't the only supplier of pork, soybean, and machinery, and corn, and potato, and so on and so forth. America is known as one of the largest farming countries in the world. However, at the same time, there's other countries as well. For instance, Russia, Ukraine. Ukraine is going through war. They might look for a strategic partner. Yes, even though China is strategically partnered up with Russia. However, it's politics. You never know. U.S. exports may suffer from retaliatory tariffs. And China can definitely do that. China is big enough, strong enough, smart enough. And if they impose those tariffs as a retaliation, that's going to affect us as well. It's going to affect our businesses. It's going to affect our families. It's going to affect America's farmland, America's production. I understand America has the world's largest trade deficit. I also understand that China has the world's largest trade plus. However, there's a reason for that as well. I understand there's an imbalance and we can bring it to balance, but also we have to be prepared for that. We have to think outside of the box, not only in the sense of politics and scare people away and just use the word tariffs, but also we have to understand that the same thing can happen to us. China can impose retaliatory tariffs on us as well. Do you know who is that going to affect? It's going to affect me, you. It's going to affect the small business that has to pass on those costs again to the everyday consumer, the everyday American. The United States is a leading player in global agriculture, both in terms of production and exports. While the US is among the top food producer globally, it's not the largest. According to data, China holds the top position in food production. That's another place where China holds the #1 position. Followed by India, #2, and the US, then #3. In terms of food exports, the United States is a significant contributor as well. In 2022, the US accounted for 9.5% of the total global agricultural export value, making the largest exporter of the agricultural products that year. But going back, China is still #1. You know what that tells me? They have a better bargaining chip than we do. We have to choose our battles wisely. And China is a battle that sometimes can be reckoned with. I want you to understand one thing. This is not a Democrat or a Republican thing. This is an American thing. We're making choices for ourselves. It doesn't matter if Trump is making these choices. It doesn't matter if we had a liberal, left-wing Democratic president making these choices. It makes no difference. I don't want you to look at it if this guy's a Republican, if this guy's a Democrat. I want you to look at it from the perspective, how is it going to affect us? Because at the end of the day, we're going to pay the tab. If you want to venture out of this video, please like, subscribe, follow, comment, share, and can we get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube?